So growing up, my younger brother, Philip, he used to beat the shit out of me. I know, right? My younger brother. So it's ironic that I would be the one person in our family that would turn up in court to support him when he was up on charges of dangerous driving and drink driving for the second time. Now, Philip, he was a self-proclaimed hellraiser. And he and I were complete opposites. Like if you were to compare us to, I don't know, radio announcers, TV announcers, I would be the Lee Sales of announcers. Apologies, Lee. And Philip, well, obviously, he'd be Carl Sandilands. At school, I was the class geek. I wore my socks up to my knees. I had a nice straight haircut. Philip, I think he went to school. But I'm not sure if he wore socks, and I don't even know if he owned socks. And he fashioned his haircut on John Bon Jovi, you know, down to the shoulders, curly locks. It was the mid-'80s, right? It was the mid-'80s. At high school, I didn't have a girlfriend. I never got kissed. It's okay, I'm good. Now, Philip, though, he had a lot of girlfriends. And I remember him coming into my room once, so proud, so pleased. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Matt." And I go, "What the heck, dude? What are you doing?" And on his chest, on his tummy, were these pink, red, purpley welts, these bruises. And I go, "What happened, man?" And he says, "My girlfriend, she gave me hickeys, like love bites, in the shape of a P for Philip, you know, Matthew?" Yeah, I get it. Now, my mum and dad, they were always there for us. But, you know, Philip liked to push boundaries. He liked to take things to the extreme. And so there came a point where my mum and dad just said, "Look, us kids, we've got to take responsibility and accountability for our actions." And so they decided, look, we're at our wits' end. We can't get to court. We're not going to go there. We're not going to be there for Philip this time. But I realised Philip could go to jail, right? So I decided I would go there. I would support him. I would be there for my little bro, even though the shit used to beat me up. So I turned up in court. I wrangled half a day off work. I turned up in court. I got my jacket on, my usual work attire, my jacket, my collar tie. I get into the back of the court where Philip's sitting, waiting for his case to be called, and all his mates are there in their T-shirts and their jeans and their messed up hair. And like, this is the best show in town. All his mates are there. They all want to see my larger-than-life brother get taken down by the big arm of the law. And I'm sitting there with Philip, and we're watching the case before Philip. And this guy is there, and he's been charged with drink driving, and he's sentenced to 6 months in jail. And I go to Philip, "Dude, what was your blood alcohol?" And he goes, "More than that, guy." I go, "Oh." So then Philip is called up, right? He's called up to go and sit in the dock. And there's this chant that comes from his mates at the back of the courtroom. "Philip's gonna get a bleeding ass tonight, boys." I go, "Oh." And Philip turns around and he looks at me, and I'm trying to read him. I think he's worried, but you never can tell with Philip. But I tell you, I was worried. I was really worried. And then his lawyer walks in and they hardly say 2 words. In fact, I didn't even know it was his lawyer to start with because his hair was messed up as the guys at the back here. I thought he'd be more suited here. His shirt was hanging out, his shoes were scuffed. And I think, wow, this guy is not even as old as I am, and he's my brother's lawyer. Then the judge comes in and the case starts. So Philip's lawyer calls up as the first witness a truck driver. So a bit of a backstory here. Philip, his pride and joy in life is his red MG midget soft top car. All right, it's honestly as big or as small as this stage. It's tiny, but it's his pride and joy. So him and his mate, they're coming hurtling into town on the day in question on a Sunday afternoon at speed on the wrong side of the road, sort of like Noddy and Big Ears, you know. And this truck driver in this 2-ton truck sees them on the wrong side of the road and goes, "You little shit." Right, and he takes charge. He starts chasing them. And they're driving around town, all in this big truck chasing this little MG midget. And it's sort of, whenever I think of that, I get this image in my head of like a Benny Hill skit. You know, like, and finally, Philip pulls up behind the boiler house of the local hospital and they do a runner, him and his mate. They just run off. So the lawyer asks the truck driver, "So, you're in this large truck and you're chasing my client, the defendant, in a small little car. And you're chasing him through town. Now, was there anyone else on the street when you were doing this?" And the truck driver goes, "No, there wasn't." Okay. So the lawyer goes, "Right. Let me ask you that again. You're chasing my client through town. You're saying there's no one else around. Can you please confirm that?" And the truck driver goes, "There was no one else around." Okay, right. Okay. Final question, just so I'm clear. You're chasing my client through town in this big truck on an MG midget, and you saw no one else on the street around. And the truck driver goes, oh, I go, Jesus, this lawyer is like so badly dressed, and he's also deaf. What the heck? We've already answered this question twice. And the truck driver goes, I told you, there was no one else around. It was me and him. And the lawyer turns to the judge and he says, so, Your Honour, all there was on the road was this large truck and a small MG midget. No one else was around. So that is theoretical dangerous driving, not actual dangerous driving. And the judge goes, correct. Charge dismissed. I'm going, what the heck is that? Who's ever heard of that? And there's this chuckle from the back of the courthouse. And my brother turns around. I'm going, dude, you've still got the drink driving charge. Why are you getting excited? And this is not Philip's first drink driving charge. Admittedly, the first time, he jumped on a 50cc moped on his mate's mother's front yard, wobbled a bit on the lawn, through the rose bush, over the curb, onto the road, just as a cop was going past, very amused. Thought he'd breathalyze him. Yep, he was over the limit. The rest is history. But, you know, he was drunk. So the lawyer calls up Philip now to the witness stand and starts asking Philip some questions. He says to Philip, right, why did you park your car behind the boiler house of the hospital? And Philip goes, well, sir, that's my pride and joy, that car, and I didn't want it to get scratched, and I know the safest place in town is behind the boiler house. I'm sitting there going, dude, what's with the voice? Jesus. And since when was that the safest place in town? It's not. So then the lawyer says, all right, Philip, what did you do after that? Can you relay to the court what happened after that? Well, sir, my mate and I, we were really thirsty. So we took off to the local pub and we had a drink. We drank everything on the top shelf. And then we walked back to my car to collect something, not to drive. And the truck driver and the police were there. They breathalyzed me and I got arrested. Right, Phil, So you weren't drunk when you were driving the car? Oh, no, sir, I wasn't. Honestly. Okay, Phil. So when they arrested you, why did you slide down the car and sit on the ground? And honestly, this is what he said. Because, sir, the police officer was bigger than me. I'm going, oh, dude, you've got to take this seriously. Okay, Philip, the lawyer says, so what happened? Did they offer you a lawyer when they arrested you? And Philip said, no. Because you see, for a very brief period in time in New Zealand history in the 1990s, they erroneously got the script wrong for arresting people, and they omitted the line which says you're entitled to have a lawyer. And so for that very short period, they fixed it very quickly, but in that very short period of time, Philip got arrested. So the lawyer turns again to the judge and says, so, sir, Your Honour, my client has been illegally, wrongly arrested. And the judge goes, he looks at the lawyer, he looks at the police, he looks at my brother, and he says, correct. Charges dropped, case dismissed, you're free to go. And Philip walks down into the courtroom. The judge is still there, the police are still there, and he says to the guys in the back of the courthouse, the drinks are on me tonight, bro, I'm going to just pay off the lawyer. I'm going, oh. About a week later, when Philip should have most likely been languishing in a jail, he gets on a plane and he goes off to the United Kingdom to do the classic Kiwi OE, overseas experience. As is typical of Philip, he goes off grid, we don't hear from him for quite some time, and then Mum and Dad get a phone call to say he's joined the British Army. He does 2 tours of duty in Northern Ireland, which rightly screws with his head. And so, in Philip's infinite wisdom, very unique wisdom, he decides that the more safer option is to join the British Army exhibition skydiving team. And he goes on to do, it's the Flying Tigers, he goes on to do about 700 jumps. He skydives into the FA Cup games. He wins a bunch of medals at the British skydiving championships. A few years later, I get a phone call. And perhaps it's because Philip has lived a life pushing boundaries, living life to the extreme, that I'm told in this phone call that Philip's in hospital, having just attempted to commit suicide. And I'm living on the other side of the world at this time, and so I can't get to be there with him and I can't support him. And I have to reconcile it in some small way by knowing that I was there that day when he was in court. Philip is still with us. He's still alive and kicking, and he's married to a beautiful woman called Deb. They've just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and Deb is a psychiatric nurse. And the running joke in our family, one of the many running jokes in our family, is when they started going out, started dating, did Deb see Philip as a date or as a project? Hey, look, a funny postscript. When Philip left for the UK, he sold his pride and joy, that little red MG midget soft-top naughty car, to one of his mates. And you've got to feel for the guy. You really have to feel for that guy, because for weeks, months, if not years later, every time he took that car out on the road, he'd get pulled over by the cops, hoping it was my brother, and still pissed off that he got off that day in court.